Hello friends, now we will see the notes of Scratch. Scratch is one of the version of Jejuri which is written by Arun Balakrishna Kolatkar. Introduction. According to M.H. Abrahams, imagery is used to signify all the objects and qualities of sense perception referred to in a poem or other work of literature, whether by literary description, by allusion, or in the vehicles of its similes or metaphors. There are many great examples of use. Kena has pointed by the one of his essays, any image is by its nature more vivid than any statement. Erza Pond once remarked that it is better to present one image in his lifetime than to produce voluminous works. A.N. Dwivedi says imagery serves twin purpose together, that the ornamentation and arousing aesthetic. Arun Balakrishna Kolatkar. There are many poets in Anglian who use imagery. One of them is Arun Balakrishna Kolatkar, was born on 1st November 1832. Died on 25th September 2004, was a poet from Maharashtra, India, writing in both Marathi and English. His poems found humor in many everyday matters. His poetry had an influence on modern Marathi poet. His first book of English poetry, Jejuri, is a collection of 31 poems pertainingly to the visit to Hafiz to a religious place of this same name in Maharashtra. The book won Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 1977. His Marathi verse collection, Bikki Wahi, won a Sahitya Akademi Award in 2005. This poem is made up of a series of short fragments which describe the experiences of a secular visitor to the ruins of Jejuri, a pilgrimage site in Maharashtra. It is one of the better known poems in modern Indian literature. In this collection, the poet has used imagery such as S. Deshpande says about him and his uses of says. Arun Kolatkar Jejuri is a poem remarkable in many ways. It is complex in terms of theme, characterization, and imagery. Its structure is as much symbolic as the mythological and naturalistic. Its most striking qualities are ambiguity and multivalence, the relating to his tone and other to his meaning, but what impress one at the very outset. Jejuri. The poem lore tends to be special, but it is not actually so. It is neither theistic nor atheistic in tone as unfolded at times in our study of its diction also, style and imagery. Imagery is an indispensable ingredient of poetry because it is imagery which lends solidity to an idea. Arun Kolatkar's imagery is perfectly concrete. Most of the poem in Jejuri contain vivid imagery. The butterfly and heart of ruin, which contain half of dozen pictures, not only vivid and realistic but also interesting. Arun Kolatkar has used imagery in his poems. Imagery is an essential component, part of the poem because it uses imagery for imagination. Sometimes there is no doubt the idea itself is very abstract, and in that case, it doesn't provide and purity. An idea, though, it can still serve as an explanation of the idea in philosophical language. In the first poem of this collection, he has used imagery such as the poet describes that this poem is from the starting point of to its destination, which is the temple of Kandoba. It is a state transport bus whose windows are checked by tarpaulin, with which the bus has been covered for possible rainfall to keep the cold air away. Those who fly in the entire migration. This is a night journey that has just done, and many hours of hard work started waiting for the passengers anxiously for the morning. He tells us about many pictures like cold air, travelers, old men, sunglasses, buses, and many more. A scratch gives us the image of a murderer of Kandoba, who has turned into a stone of Kandoba when he killed with his sword in a fury of rage. A rift which runs across that part of a rock is Kandoba has killed, where when the boy is trusted about himself, believe in him. He tells he feels uncomfortable and wants to attract attention of the visitor. All images of a butterfly have been shown in these lines. These 5 hills are 5 demons that Kandoba killed, says the priest's son, a young boy. This poem describes the poet's visit to Jejuri, a place of pilgrimage a few kilometers away from the city of Pune, which is the hill temple of Lord Kandoba, an avatar of God Shiva. The poet's visit to Jejuri has in many instances been referred to as touristy. The visit is completed in a half revolution of the sun, beginning at sunrise and ending at sunset. The experience of the poet is non secularized. The visitor is deliberately non involved, which gives an object element to it. This unbiased and distant attitude increases the credibility of the poet's attitudes and outlook about the institutionalization. Jejuri, a sequence of 37 poems, is a social and cultural critique of 20th century India and a manifestation of its modernist credo. It is a collection of short and long poems built around the objects seen and the experiences evoked in the protagonist on his visit to the pilgrim center, Jejuri. The poem evokes a sense of image that unsettle the reader presenting the sequence. Kolatkar was hesitant about bringing out his English verse, but his very first book, Jejuri, had a wide impact among fellow poets and literatures like Nizam Ezekiel and Salman Rushdie. Brought out from a small press, it was reprinted twice in quick succession, and British Nardi was quick to anthologize him in the cut collection Stranger Time. For same year, some of his poems were also included in school texts. The poem sequence deals with a visit to Jejuri, a pilgrimage site for the local Maharashtrian deity Kandoba. In a conversation with the poet Anus de Souza, Kolatkar says he discovered Jejuri in a book on temples and legends of Maharashtra. There was a chapter on Jejuri in it. It seemed an interesting place. Along with his brother and a friend, he visited Jejuri in 1963 and appears to have composed some poems shortly thereafter. A version of the poem, A Low Temple, was published soon in a title magazine called Dionysia. Dionysius, but both the original manuscript and this magazine were lost subsequently. The poems were recreated in the 1970s and were published in literary quarterly in 1974, and the book came out in 1976. The poems evoke a series of images to highlight the ambiguities in modern day life. Although situated in a religious setting, they are not religious. In 1978, an interviewer asked him if he believed in God, and Kolatkar said, I leave the question alone. I don't think I have to take a position about God one way or the other. Before Jejuri, Kolatkar had also published other poem sequences, including The Boat Ride, which appeared in the little magazine Dawn, a magazine of the arts in 1968, and was anthologized twice. A few of his early poems in English also appeared in Dilip Sitre and Anthology of Marathi Poetry 1945 to 1965 and 1967. Although some of these poems claim to be an English version by poet, their Marathi originals were never committed to paper. This is also true of some other bilingual poets like Vilas Sarang, although Kolatkar was never known as a social commentator. While Jejuri was about the organized relationship of a modern sensitive individual with the indigenous culture, the Kala Choda poems are about the dark underside of Mumbai's underbelly. The wild bringing heritageness megapolis is envisioned in various oblique and whimsical perspectives of an underdog. Like Jejuri, Kalagoda is also a place from exploring the myth, history, geography, and ethos of the place in a typical Kolatkar's queue. style. While Jejuri is very popular place for pilgrimage to pastoral god, could never become Kolatkar's home. Kalaghoda is about exploring the baffling complexity of the great metropolis. While Jejuri can be considered as an example of searching for a belonging, while happens to be the major fixation of the previous generation of Indian poets in English, Kalagoda poems do not betray any anxieties and agonies of belonging. With the Kalagoda poems, Indian poetry in English seems to have grown up, shedding adolescent identity crisis and goosebumps. The remarkable maturity of poetic version embodied in the Kala Goda poems makes it something of a milestone in Indian poetry in English. After his death, a new edition of the hard to obtain Jejuri was published in the New York Review Books Classics series with an introduction by Amit Chaudhary 2006. Near his death, he had also requested Aravinda Krishna Malhotra to edit some of his uncollected poems. Conclusion. Poetry of Kolatkar does not just employ the literary device of defamiliarization, nor does simply deal with the theme of alienation of the Western educated intellectual form. His roots, his texts have complex multiple meanings and operate at more than one level. His oblique version dislocates the established ways of perception only to yield richer insights into Indian culture. This is certainly not the tourist eye view, nor it is written with the consider a Western audience in the mind. If you like my video, please subscribe for more videos. If you feel it is useful, please let me know in the comment box. Thank you.